I think the hardest part of growing up
I was just ready to see something different.
I've been around, yeah.
Oh my God.
Experience a different kind of environment.
I thought about it a lot, and I was like, what was like the moment where I just
This
started
is
crying
the
right
most
there.
wonderful moment of my life.
just like myself.
Just see what else was out there.
I went to a private school before I was homeschooled. And when I was at the private school, I had a lot of friends and I had a wonderful social life. And then I became homeschooled. At the beginning, I was like in the throes of puberty and being completely removed from my social life and living in central Illinois where I had no interest in being involved in anything that was going on because it was all religious or Girl Scouts or 4-H, and those were the three options, and none of those seemed appealing to me. So I just didn't have any friends, and I didn't leave the house except to go to the grocery store or the library, and that happened once or twice a week. So the rest of the time, I was completely isolated, and I wasn't exposed to anything that told me that I was normal or beautiful or capable of pulling myself out of this stuck feeling that I had fallen into, and I didn't have any friends to talk to about any of that stuff, so I was just in my brain trying to process this, and that sunk me into this state of complete depression.
You have fuzz on your face.
I didn't want to get up in the morning. I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was incredibly angry. I was so aggressive towards my mom because I knew that she would always be there for me and she would always love me. So I took out all this frustration and anger and pent-up stress on her, and I felt completely invisible. There was nothing. That was the lowest I've ever been.
I was the first person in my family not to go to college right after high school, so my parents were disappointed in that. I was just doing a lot of things that I fortunately learned from. This girl moved in with me when I was a junior in high school. I was just making really silly, irresponsible choices that I thought at the time were very responsible and the right thing to do. And I just didn't take school seriously, and so every day my parents were pissed at me and they kicked me out twice. I didn't have the grades to graduate, and so I didn't feel like putting in the time to actually get my credits to get my diploma. You don't know where you're gonna go at that point. But again, time kind of takes care of it. It was more of a positive kind of learning experience for me.
I was bullied throughout pretty much my whole time, middle school and high school through there. I moved there in 6th grade, and so I was immediately made fun of. I was the new kid. I got picked on. I was called fat bitch all the time, yelled out of windows on the street, in school. I did have friends. I wasn't a totally outsider, but it was just, it happened a lot. It was a big part of growing up for sure. I think it made me more convicted and more confident in who I was, because obviously I cheated a lot, oh, I am annoying, I'm gross, I'm too fat, all this stuff that I was being told, all this negative stuff. But after a while I was fuck this, I don't care, I want to be myself, even though this stuff people are gonna say shit to me, I don't care, I'm not gonna waste my time trying to impress people when obviously it seems kind of futile. If people aren't gonna take me seriously because I look this way or because I'm fat or overweight, then fuck them. I am not defined by my body. I am not who I'm not the person I am because of what my body is perceived as, or what parts of my body are consumable. That's bullshit. I'm a human being first and foremost.
I think the hardest part of growing up was coming to terms with the fact that my parents are actually people and seeing how that has affected the family dynamic and seeing like the family dynamic fall apart because of that, and realizing that a lot of that had to do with them having kids. They had us because they felt like it would improve their lives, and to make that possible, my dad was going back to school to become an engineer, and after I was born, he did that. And so he made a bunch of money, and my mom stayed home with me and my sister, and everything that they were doing was focused on our upbringing. And because it was so focused on us, they neglected to care about themselves at all. They weren't secure enough in their own identities to actually maintain this family after the kids are gone. I think that's kind of how it disintegrated. When I left, it was a big deal. When I came to college, it was this huge transition because my mom and I were pretty close. It's just gonna be the two of them for the first time, and it'll have been like 22 years at that point. And because of that, I think that they're kind of going into like panic mode a little bit now. My mom is always asking me, she's like, what should I do with my life? What do I have to do with my life? Where do I go? What do I do? What do I want? And I'm like, Mom, I can't answer those questions for you. You know, I can't be the mom here.
This is autonomy. So this is like anti-voting, just like general.
Probably when I was like 14 or 15, when my parents were getting a divorce. I was always home alone a lot because my mom was not home and my dad was not home, and they were both doing their own things. And so I would like be home alone, and I would be really sad, and I'd be really scared, and I'm like a kid growing up, and I don't have my parents like help to like talk because they weren't there to talk or anything. And I was like, this is like a time in my life when I definitely resorted to like self-harm and like pretty aggressive. I was like, yes, that age, and I would like go sneak downstairs and like get a big wine glass out of the cupboard and like go into my parents' closet and just fill it with vodka and like just sit in my room alone and like drink it and like pass out. And I think that was like probably like one of the darkest times in my life. Seeing like the deterioration of like my mom and like the relationship change. Like my parents changed a lot, and like we still live together, so all of us. So it was just like a hell house. You couldn't like go in one room without like seeing who was in it. If they were both in the room, it's like you can't go in there. Like they were always fighting. It was like definitely especially hard because like I'm adopted. I had this like, you know, losing, like it's like that loss thing. Like it's like, oh, I'm losing a parent again.
When it was like 3 days after I dropped out, and I was staying with my dad because I was afraid of my mom. And we all got lunch one day to just kind of mediate the situation and like at least come up with some sort of game plan. And for like 20 minutes, my parents were actually like sitting. Just to give you some background, my parents hate each other. And my mom, anytime she has anything to say about my dad, it's usually shit talking. And that's pretty much what I remember just growing up. Like they've been divorced for as long as I can remember. The only relationship I remember them having is just them like being at each other constantly. And so for the first time in my life, I'm 17 years old, and I'm seeing my mom and my dad sitting down having lunch, having a civilized like just conversation, and actually being able to tolerate one another. Maybe somewhat enjoying one another's company. And that was just weird and surreal for me because it was literally like the first time I've seen it at 17 fucking years old. And I started crying just right there. And I don't think they noticed. I think they were too mad at me. And they hugged when they left. And that was the first and only time I've seen that.
I feel like there are ways to regard our history that aren't just through a lens of sentiment or regret, but that actually challenge us to become more dynamic in our current existence. Like, looking at the past is a process through which new and unique insight can be developed over time. And it allows memory to serve more as a living entity, not just as a figment of the past.